Okay, so in this video we're going to look at session planning, something new coaches struggle with. So I'm doing this video to try and help you coaches maybe have a better idea of how to put together a session plan. So things to remember when planning a session: who you're coaching to, your age group, what you're trying to get out of them, and put these things together to then decide whether your session plan, how much content is required. Now, a good tip I found when I'm dealing with session plans is to only have what I need and don't overload my session plan with tons and tons of stuff that ends up just making it more complicated if I'm trying to refer back to it. So if I was coaching a younger group of players, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds, and my focus is all on things like ball mastery, so more like a level 1 kind of session, I would have a nice basic session plan, which would be something a little bit along the lines of this. I'll show these closer at the end of the video, where my session plan would be very nice and simple. I build this one obviously myself because I personally find if I build it myself, I can create it exactly as I need rather than downloading a template and trying to work everything within that template. So again, that's completely up to you, but it's my personal preference to create my own. So my basic session plan would have the title at the top, which is really important, so you know what you're working with. The date, again, people, why do I need the date? The date allows you to refer to when did I deliver this session, so that I can go back to it and I can remember when I did it, and do I need to repeat? Has it been a long time? These sort of things will really help. In here I've got my warm-up, which it can be whatever you want it to be: SAQ, a game, a rival activity, something that's linking into what the session is going to be. In this side I've got my little 4-corner model, so I would have my little technical, social little aspects of the session to what I would want to do. This box here would be my diagram of my session. So if I was doing, say, skill corridor as an example, I wouldn't need to go to 3 or 4 different practices, because within skill corridor it's one of those sessions where you can run it the whole session, so I wouldn't need to put more boxes in. Then here, this is where I would have my progressions, and I say with something like skill corridor you can probably get a good 15-20 progressions in within the session. I mean, skill corridor is one of those brilliant ones that you can just put 100 progressions in. And then I would have my coaching points here, so that it's always good to refer back to, because every coach within a session will go at the end of the session, I forgot this, I forgot that. And if I've got my coaching points in general written down, it helps with what I'm going to do. And then I have my debrief at the bottom, so that it then helps me with what I'm trying to translate to players at the end of the session, and it also lets me check their understanding. Do their views come back with what I've got in my debrief? I know we always end sessions with a match, but I wouldn't need to put that on here because there's no setup except your standard pitch. So again, to keep it more simple and not clogging up what I don't need. And then at the bottom of this, it's in small, I just have a key so that anybody could pick this up and understand what are my passing lines, what are my players following passes, what the cones are, and things like that. And it just helps make the session a lot easier to understand. So that's a very basic template I created for myself that I always use when I'm doing something very simple. If I was following that kind of session but I had more practices, so I was maybe still working on ball mastery, but instead of just having skill corridor, I would have a practice here that maybe is going to run for 10-15 minutes, then a separate practice, then another practice in here, and these might all be sort of 10-15 minutes each. So I've got them separate and I know what I'm going to do. The difference I would do is I would make my progressions maybe 3-4 maximum, absolute maximum within the session of each part of the practice. But the top part is still the same. I've got my session, my date, my 4 corners, my warm-up, and within that session I can work there. And my debrief, I've just moved over to here with my coaching points on this side. Always a good one to have, so you know what you do. And then my key at the bottom, so that if another coach picked this up, you could quite easily look at it and understand what's going on. So it's just another session idea of how you can keep it nice and simple, but get everything you require to deliver in that session. So now we move on to something more complicated. So if I was doing a session with the Academy boys at Morecambe that I currently coach at, this is more of a UEFA B kind of session plan I will put together. Within it, I have obviously my session title, which becomes even more important when you're working at that kind of level. I have in this little here my warm-up. I have an SAQ one I do with them quite regularly that the boys know about, so for me I don't need to elaborate on that because I know what it is. Then I would have my little box here where I've got my primary player, my secondary player, and my primary unit. So again, I can understand who pick this up, people can understand what I'm looking at, who I'm trying to work with. In this particular session that I did, I had a skill practice to start with. We then went into a small-sided game, and then we always finish with a phase. Obviously I have my session content here of who I'm trying to work with, what I'm trying to get out of it. Same into this, what the session entails, and then the same into this with the defence versus attack. Different being in this session is I have my coaching points on this side, so I know, just to refresh my own memory, here I have my logical order, which is a good one if you're working at this level, so you can idea of who you're trying to influence first. This particular session was for my centre forward trying to screen passes into midfield. So if we're setting up a low block, trying to sort of screen passes from the centre backs into the midfield. So my logical order is there, who I would work with first, and then second and third to get my practice ideas out. Then I would have my coach roles and responsibilities on this, because obviously I need each player to understand their role and responsibility. And it's easier for a coach if I can refer back to something that's written down rather than having to try and store everything in my brain. You've got lots going on in a session, high tempo, players moving, it's all quick, and you've got to then, so it's always good to have this to be able to refresh yourself within your session with what you're doing. Obviously I'd have my key at the bottom as normal, but the slight difference this one is on the back. I would turn it over because I obviously need more room. And within this session, I've got my session objectives. So this is what I want to get out of the session, who I want to influence the most, and see if I can get to these objectives. On this, I always have a session recap. So I can remember what we did the last session. I can refresh players' memories, who I worked with, what I want to do, and how we're moving into this next session. And then last but not least, I've got my review of the session. Did I get out of it what I wanted? Was things right? Did I get my focus across? All these kind of things in my review so that I can then realise, do I need to repeat that session? Can I move on? Did my players understand it? And everything like that. So that's kind of 3 basic sessions I put together for myself, because I find creating my own is the easiest way to get everything I need for myself within a session. You can download templates, there's some good ones online. It was like this one that obviously I printed off offline, which was a nice good little session. Again, if you're working into a UEFA B level, they've got your narrow focus bits and stuff on there, but you can also adapt this. So there are some stuff out there you can download and use, but I find personally it was easier to create my own session plan and get all my content in. So that's just a quick brief one on session plans. My next video will talk about the different kind of sessions that you can put on as a coach, where you can take them and how you might be able to develop each part of your session.